The Milky Way had seen better days. Ever since the Zebulon Empire decided humans were the galaxy's equivalent of that weird mold you find behind the refrigerator, things had been, well, explosive. Commander Jack Reynolds stared through the energy barrier of his cell aboard the Zebulon flagship Imperial Dominance, a name that Jack found hilariously on the nose. The ship's interior was all gleaming metal and pulsing blue lights, designed to intimidate. Unfortunately for the Zebulons, Jack had spent his childhood in a haunted house attraction his parents operated, so his threshold for intimidating atmosphere was unreasonably high. The cell's barrier rippled as General Krax stepped through. Standing 7 feet tall with iridescent purple scales and 4 arms, Krax looked like what would happen if you crossbred a Komodo dragon with a weightlifter and sprinkled in some disco aesthetic. Human, Krax's voice rumbled like a garbage disposal trying to process a fork. You will now witness the destruction of your pathetic fleet. Jack, a man of average height with disheveled brown hair and a perpetually amused expression, looked up from picking dirt from under his fingernails. Cool. Do you guys have popcorn? The viewport beside his cell displayed the ongoing battle, Zebulon cruisers surrounding a significantly smaller human fleet. The human ships were scattered, outnumbered 10 to 1. Your species' arrogance is remarkable, Krax gestured toward the viewport with one of his 4 arms. The other 3 were variously holding a command tablet, adjusting his ornate uniform, and dramatically clenched in a fist. Even now, facing extinction, you joke. Jack shrugged. It's called coping humor, very popular on Earth. Earth, Krax spat the word like it tasted bad. A backwater planet that somehow produced the most irritating species in the cosmos. We're like cockroaches that way, Jack grinned. Except we've got thumbs and nuclear weapons. Krax's scales rippled in what Jack had learned was their version of an eye roll. Your capture was almost disappointing in its simplicity. The infamous Commander Jack Reynolds, caught scanning our outpost with outdated equipment. Jack winced. Yeah, budget cuts. You know how it is. No, Krax said flatly. Our empire appropriately funds its military. Good for you, Jack replied, watching as a Zebulon cruiser's engine suddenly flickered and died. Interesting. The general hadn't noticed yet. Your fleet commander will surrender within the hour, Krax continued. And you, Commander Reynolds, will provide us with all human military protocols before we eradicate your species entirely. Jack yawned dramatically. Sounds like a busy afternoon. Your insolence changes nothing. Look at your fleet, disorganized, outgunned, without reinforcements. Jack's eyes twinkled with mischief as he leaned forward. About those reinforcements, General, they might be closer than you think. 3 Zebulon guards escorted Jack to the ship's interrogation chamber, a room that looked like it had been decorated by someone obsessed with dental equipment and medieval torture devices. The chair they strapped him to had more restraints than seemed strictly necessary. Comfy, Jack remarked as metal clamps secured his wrists, ankles, torso, and even his neck. Do I get a magazine while I wait? General Krax stomped into the room, dismissing the guards with a flick of his wrist. Commander Reynolds, perhaps you don't understand your situation. You are not in a position for humor. The Marquis. See, that's where you're wrong, Jack replied. Humor is portable. I take it everywhere. The interrogation began predictably, questions about Earth's defense systems, fleet positions, access codes. Jack expertly danced around them, giving answers that sounded helpful but were completely useless. It was a skill he'd perfected during his unusual military career. Unlike most officers who rose through traditional ranks, Jack had been recruited into the Human Special Intelligence Division, or HUSID as the brass called it, though Jack preferred the Whoopsie Squad for its more accurate representation of their chaotic approach to galactic conflicts. Your capture was a significant blow to human morale, Krax said, circling Jack's chair like a teacher who caught a student cheating. Our scouts reported your vessel approaching alone, conducting scans of our outpost on Proxima Centauri EE. Jack remembered that day clearly. His small reconnaissance ship had indeed been alone, at least in the conventional sense. Yeah, rookie mistake, Jack admitted. Should have brought a bigger gun. What the Zebulons didn't know was that Jack's outdated equipment was actually cutting-edge tech disguised as junk. His capture hadn't been accidental either. Your species' military doctrine baffles me, Krax admitted, checking something on his command tablet. Sending high-ranking officers on solo missions, deploying scattered and mismatched fleets. Jack shrugged as much as his restraints would allow. We're an unpredictable bunch. Inefficient, Krax corrected. And now, fatal. A junior officer burst into the room, scales flared in obvious distress. General, we're experiencing system anomalies across the fleet. Communications on the eastern flank are down. Krax's eyes narrowed. Cause? Unknown, sir. Tech division suggests possible solar flare interference. Jack bit back a smile. Solar flare interference. Right. Me then. After the officer left, Krax turned his attention back to Jack with renewed intensity. Your fleet must have deployed some primitive electronic warfare. It won't save them. Electronic warfare, Jack repeated thoughtfully. That's an interesting theory. I've studied your military history, Krax said, unexpectedly. Human wars were always messy, improvised affairs. You never developed the disciplined uniformity that makes the Zebulon Empire superior. Jack couldn't help but laugh. You say that like it's a bad thing. It is your fundamental weakness. Is it, though? Jack asked, subtly testing his restraints. One wrist clamp had loosened slightly. Because from where I'm sitting, which is admittedly not my first choice of seating, unpredictability has some advantages. The lights in the interrogation room flickered momentarily. Krax glanced up, mandibles clicking with annoyance. More solar flares? Jack asked innocently. Krax grabbed Jack by the throat with one of his lower arms. What do you know about these malfunctions? Me? Nothing. I'm just a prisoner, remember? Jack wheezed through the partial chokehold. But hypothetically, if I were you, I'd check your ship's environmental systems next. Just a hunch. As if on cue, the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Or enough games. General Krax slammed two of his fists onto the metal table beside Jack's chair. Your fleet is being decimated while you sit here making jokes. What is your strategy? Jack raised an eyebrow. Strategy implies we plan things. We're more of an improvisational jazz kind of military. Across the viewport, another Zebulon cruiser suddenly veered off course, nearly colliding with its neighbor. Three more had completely darkened, their engines silent. Sir. A communications officer's voice blared over the intercom. We've lost control of weapons systems on decks 5 through 17. The targeting computers are recalibrating themselves. Override it, Krax barked. We can't, sir. The system isn't recognizing command codes. Jack whistled. Having a rough day at the office, huh? Krax's scales shifted from purple to a deep crimson, the Zebulon equivalent of turning red with rage. What is happening to my fleet, human? Well, I'm no expert in Zebulon engineering, Jack began, but it sounds like someone's rewiring your ships from the inside out. Impossible. Our systems are encrypted with quantum-level security. Quantum level, Jack repeated with a nod. Very impressive. Almost as impressive as Hank. What is a Hank? Krax demanded. As if responding to its name, every screen in the interrogation room suddenly displayed the same message. Human autonomous neural kineticist. At your service, Jack. That's a Hank, Jack said with undisguised pride. My AI companion. Been with me since we left Earth orbit. Super smart, slightly sassy, and absolutely loves messing with alien technology. Krax's jaw literally dropped, a Zebulon expression of utter disbelief that looked particularly comical on their reptilian faces. You brought an artificial intelligence aboard my flagship? Not exactly. I brought the hardware it needed to infiltrate your systems. Hank was already in your network before you captured me. He hitched a ride on the communications burst you sent when reporting my capture. Another message flashed across the screens. BT, your password security is terrible. 123 Zebulon Rolls is not a secure authentication code. Cracks lunged for the communications panel. Lock down all systems. Purge the network. Yeah, that's not going to work, Jack said conversationally. See, Hank doesn't just infiltrate systems, he becomes them. By now, he's essentially your ship's operating system. Sir. Another panicked voice over the intercom. The hangar bay doors are opening and closing randomly. Atmospheric containment is failing in sections. Also, Jack added, human military doctrine isn't actually chaotic. We're just really, really good at making it look that way. Hank, how's it going with the other ships? The screens changed to show a tactical display. 14 Zebulon ships were now drifting powerless. Several others were moving in erratic patterns. You magnificent bastard, Cracks whispered, a rare human idiom he must have picked up from intelligence reports. This was your plan all along. Getting captured? Jack grinned. Oldest trick in the book. The flagship shuddered as another system crashed. Emergency lights bathed the interrogation room in an ominous red glow. Your fleet is in disarray, General, Jack observed calmly. Might be time to consider your options. Cracks's scales had faded to a pale lavender, the Zebulon equivalent of going white with shock. He grabbed Jack's restraints with all four hands. Where are your reinforcements hiding? We detected no other human vessels in this sector. Jack just smirked. You're looking at them. One human? Impossible. One human plus one very sophisticated AI, Jack corrected. Hank, I think the General's ready for Phase 2. The restraints around Jack's wrists and ankles suddenly released. He stood up, stretching casually while Cracks backed away. In the 3 days I've been your prisoner, Jack explained, Hank has been systematically compromising every system on every ship in your fleet. Right now, he controls approximately 78% of your critical functions. Bards, Cracks shouted, but the intercom only played an Earth pop song in response. Sorry, intercom's busy, Jack said. Hank has a thing for 20th century music. Personally, I think his taste is stuck in the wrong century, but who am I to judge? A robotic voice emerged from the room's speakers. I have excellent taste, Jack. Also, I finished accessing their weapons systems. Would you like me to demonstrate? Just the small stuff, Hank. We don't want to cause permanent damage. On cue, the sprinkler system activated throughout the ship, drenching everything. For the scale-covered Zebulons, this was particularly unpleasant. They immediately began slipping on the wet floor. You see, General, Jack continued, easily maintaining his balance while Cracks struggled to stay upright. Humans developed a different kind of warfare. We don't always need massive fleets or overwhelming numbers. What are you? Cracks sputtered, water streaming down his scales. I'm what we call a Trojan specialist. We're the human equivalent of that little wooden horse from ancient history. Looks harmless, contains multitudes. Jack casually picked up Cracks's fallen command tablet. Getting captured was the point. It got me and Hank inside your security perimeter. Throughout the ship, chaos reigned. Doors opened and closed randomly. Gravity fluctuated in different sections. The once disciplined Zebulon crew ran in confusion as their technology turned against them. One human, Cracks repeated, incredulous. Our entire battle group disabled by one human and a computer program. Artificial intelligence, Hank corrected from the speakers. And I prefer the term digital consciousness. Thank you very much. Whatever you are, Cracks hissed, the Empire has hundreds more ships. This is merely a setback. Jack tapped on the command tablet, bringing up the fleet status. About those other ships, Hank just transmitted copies of himself to all vessels that communicated with your flagship in the last hour. So that's a problem for you. Jack strolled through the corridors of the Imperial dominance like he owned the place, which, thanks to Hank, he technically did. The ship's internal security cameras tracked his progress, with Hank ensuring all doors opened for Jack while occasionally closing them on pursuing Zebulon security teams. "How are we doing on time, Hank?" Jack asked, casually ducking into a maintenance shaft as a squad of confused Zebulons ran past. 17 minutes until I achieve full systems control," Hank's voice replied from Jack's wrist communicator. "May I suggest heading to the bridge? General Krax is attempting to initiate a manual override there. I'm on my way. Any resistance? 12 armed guards, but I've rerouted the environmental controls to reduce oxygen levels in that section. They should be feeling quite lethargic by now." Jack grinned. "Have I told you lately that you're my favorite AI? You could stand to mention it more often," Hank replied dryly. Meanwhile, across the fleet, Zebulon ships were experiencing their own versions of technological rebellion. Navigation systems redirected vessels into harmless but embarrassing spiral patterns. Weapons powered down at critical moments. Communication systems broadcast human comedy shows instead of military orders. On the bridge, General Krax was frantically trying to regain control, his forearms working simultaneously on different control panels. "Sir," a junior officer reported, "the human fleet is retreating?" "Retreating." Krax looked up in confusion. "Why would they retreat when we're vulnerable?" The answer became clear when Jack sauntered onto the bridge, holding a Zebulon weapon he'd borrowed from an unconscious guard. "They're not retreating," Jack explained. "They're giving us space to surrender with dignity. Captain Rodriguez can be thoughtful that way." Krax lunged for an emergency control panel, but before he could reach it, the panel retracted into the wall. "Sorry, that's been decommissioned," Jack said. "Along with about 90% of your command functions." Around the bridge, Zebulon officers found themselves locked out of their stations. Screens displayed a small animated version of Jack doing a victory dance, Hank's idea of humor. "This is impossible," one Zebulon officer whispered. "Our technology is superior in every way." "Superior but predictable," Jack corrected. "You build beautiful, efficient systems with perfect logical architecture. That's your weakness, no chaos, no redundancies, no weird human workarounds." Jack approached Krax's command chair, an ornate affair that looked more like a throne than functional equipment. "Mind if I take a seat? Been standing in that cell for days." Without waiting for permission, Jack plopped down in the general's chair. "Comfy. Memory foam? Compressed molecular stabilizers," Krax growled, his dignity clearly wounded more than his military position. "Fancy," Jack nodded appreciatively. "Hank, status update." "All Zebulon vessels effectively neutralized," Hank reported. "I've established communication with Captain Rodriguez. The human fleet is standing by for your orders." "Excellent. General Krax, I believe this is where you formally surrender." A Zebulon lieutenant suddenly made a desperate move, pulling a concealed weapon and aiming at Jack. Before he could fire, the gravity in his immediate vicinity tripled, slamming him to the floor. "Localized gravity manipulation," Jack explained to the stunned bridge crew. "Hank's getting really good at it." "Thank you, Jack." Hank's voice had a distinct note of pride. "I've been practicing." General Krax, defeated but still maintaining some dignity, straightened his now rumpled uniform with all four hands. "The Zebulon Empire does not surrender to single individuals, no matter how resourceful." "Fair enough," Jack shrugged. "Hank, please open a channel to the human fleet." The main view screen activated, showing Captain Rodriguez on the bridge of the human flagship Tenacious. "Commander Reynolds," Rodriguez smiled. "I see you've redecorated the Zebulon flagship. Very wet look you've got going there." "Sprinkler system malfunction," Jack explained with a wink. "Captain, would you mind bringing the fleet back into position? General Krax needs a more traditional surrender scenario." "With pleasure." Rodriguez turned to her crew. "All ships, battle formation Alpha. Let's give these Zebulons what they want." On the tactical display, the human fleet, which had appeared small and scattered before, suddenly consolidated into a tight, organized formation and advanced on the disabled Zebulon ships. You were never outmatched, Krax realized, watching the display. Your fleet was executing a specific strategy all along. Yep, Jack confirmed. The scattered formation was to minimize casualties while I worked my magic from inside. Now, about that surrender. 3 days later, Jack stood in the observation lounge of the human diplomatic vessel Concordia, watching as Zebulon ships were escorted out of the sector by human patrol vessels. Quite the victory, Admiral Patel said, joining Jack at the viewport. One for the history books. Jack shrugged. Just doing my job, Admiral. Your job included single-handedly disabling an entire enemy battle group from the inside, Patel pointed out. The Zebulons have officially requested a formal peace treaty. They're terrified we have more operatives like you. Do we? Jack asked with genuine curiosity. Patel smiled enigmatically. That's classified. But between us, you're unique, Commander. Or should I say, Captain Reynolds. She handed him a small box containing captain's insignia, effective immediately, along with commendations for both you and Hank. Thank you, Admiral. Hank's voice emerged from Jack's wrist communicator. Though I'm not sure where I would pin the medal. General Krax, now a prisoner of war, was being escorted past the observation lounge toward diplomatic quarters. He paused when he saw Jack. Captain Reynolds, he acknowledged, his usual arrogance subdued. My government wishes to understand how one human could so thoroughly defeat an entire battle group. Jack smiled. That's the thing about humans, General. We're never just one human. We bring our friends, our tools, our AIs, and a whole lot of creative thinking. The Zebulon Empire has reassessed its evaluation of human military capability, Krax admitted stiffly. We had underestimated your species. Everyone does, Jack replied cheerfully. It's kind of our superpower. After Krax was escorted away, Jack turned back to the viewport, watching the stars. So what's next for the galaxy's most unconventional captain? Admiral Patel asked. I hear the Draconians are making noise near Alpha Centauri, Jack said thoughtfully. Might be time for another diplomatic capture. You want to get captured again? Patel raised an eyebrow. It worked so well the first time. Jack grinned. Besides, Hank's been wanting to try his algorithms on Draconian tech. I've developed several new infiltration techniques, Hank added eagerly. Their bio-neural interfaces present fascinating challenges. Admiral Patel shook her head in amazement. One human and his AI. God help any empire that gets in your way. Jack's grin widened. That's the thing about us humans. We don't need reinforcements when we've got ingenuity. Somewhere in the ship's systems, Hank added a triumphant musical flourish, because even an advanced AI knew when a moment needed a proper soundtrack.